Greetings, my fellow space travelers through space, time, and wherever else you find yourself in this particular dimension of this particular universe. I am your captain, Mike the Birdman. That's right, I promoted myself. Deal with it. I've earned it, more than likely. Anyway, I am here on the collaboration show between the Geekcast Radio Network and ThisWeekinGeek.net. This is Future Imperfect, the show where we not only talk about Star Trek, we also take a look at other topics and interests in the sci-fi realm. Genre, it could be movies, could be television, could be video games, which we're going to be talking about this evening. And though, as I am rambling on here as your main host this evening, I am not alone on the deck of the ship. I am joined from the Geekcast Radio Network.
Steve Megatron Phillips, also...
Меня зовут Алиса. Я попала в автомобильную катастрофу. Did you understand what I just said? The injury lawyers at Sokolov understand. So when my long-term disability claims were declined, I didn't wait. I called Sokolov. They speak my language. In fact, they actually speak over 30 different languages. So they understand more than injury law. They understood me.
We are Sokolov, Toronto's multilingual injury lawyers. Visit areyouhurt.ca.
Don't put it off, call Sokolov.
Captain Admiral of the USS Future Imperfect.
Well, I'd say you're more the fleet admiral. I'll captain this thing tonight. So, And we are joined by our good friend, contributor, and technically host with us at ThisWeekinGeek.net's new show, Loose Cannon, a celebration of B-movie horribleness or amazingness, depending on how you want to look at it. Aaron Pollyea.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
I'm awesome. I'm actually in a really, really, really good mood. This is the first collaboration show I've done in over a month. I just came back from vacation on Twig, which if you've been listening to the website this week, we had our first show back. Steve, when is the show going live?
Tuesday.
Okay, so if you're listening to this on Tuesday, I have just interviewed Doug Naylor, who is the writer, creator, director of Red Dwarf, The Promised Land, also was the co-creator of the original series back in 1989.
I love Red Dwarf. I love that show.
My God, I saw the movie and I fell in love with it. So I may go back and rewatch the 12 series preceding it. So I'm really, really, really excited. But that is not what we're going to be talking about tonight. As I mentioned, we're talking video games. So it was suggested in our little Facebook chat, our little own corner of the Subspace Communication Network, or the Hyper Pulse Generators, if you want to put it that way. We're going to be talking about some of our favorite sci-fi video games. We're going to be trying to steer away from more kind of mainstream things. I say that as two of my things are AAA game titles, but I'm looking at them not just from a gameplay perspective, talking about the deep lore associated with them. So with that in mind, just to give you guys a chance to kind of gather your thoughts, I will go first with my first pick, and then we'll each go around the table. Each of us picks one, and then we'll come back and swing back around to me so you have a rough idea on how this is going to work tonight. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is a upcoming title, but the series has been running since about 2001 on the original Xbox, and I'm talking about Halo Combat Evolved, but more specifically the Halo franchise as a whole. This has run across multiple instances of hardware from the original Xbox to the Xbox 360 to the Xbox One to the upcoming Xbox Series X with Halo Infinite, with the with the Xbox showcase happening just a few weeks ago, where we saw the first campaign gameplay for Halo Infinite. It's something for a lot of gamers to get excited about, and with the announcement of multiplayer being free to everybody who owns a Xbox, the world is indeed being able to play together, and there's even talk, actually I think it was confirmed, that there's going to be cross-play between console players and PC players. So truly it is a hybrid world of players all being connected as Spartans or elites. So good times had by all. But Halo is so much more than multiplayer. Halo has a tremendously interesting story. The story of Spartan 117, Sierra 117, John, who was taken as a child from a colony and augmented by Dr. Catherine Halsey into the cybernetic super soldier who pretty much saved the human race from extinction from an alien collection of races known as the Covenant, run by I forget what their names are, but the Prophets of Truth, Regret, and I think there was another one if I remember right. But basically, they had worshipped these things out in outer space known as halos. They had regarded them as holy relics, but turns out they were an alien super weapon created to destroy something known as the Flood, a parasitic life form that pretty much touches you, infects you, and, well, this will be my one swear for the episode. You're effectively fucked. You get turned into some weird bio creature, and it's pretty much game over. They would later introduce antagonists such as the Grave Mind, which would be a collection of Flood, which eventually becomes so intelligent that it would rival artificial intelligences left behind on the Halo rings. And it's pretty much a bad thing when a Grave Mind shows up. They want to destroy and consume all life in the galaxy, and the Halo rings were designed to deprive the Flood of their food, which is all sentient life. So not a good time for anybody involved in general. But as the Halo series would go on, the fight would continue across Halo 1, Combat Evolved, Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo ODST, which was a spin-off game where you played a orbital drop shock trooper during the invasion of New Mombasa on Earth, and you were playing a human. You literally weren't as tough as a Spartan. You had the same weapons, but you couldn't do all the cool things they did. And it's frankly probably my favorite game in the series, and I know that's not a popular opinion to have, because people want to play Spartans, and it was a really short game, but it was a lot of fun. We then had Halo Reach, where we had the prequel, which was the fall of Reach, and Reach was a planet where the Covenant really put the screws to humanity, and a lot of terrible things happened, pardon me, and a lot of people got wiped out, including Noble Team, which was a team of Spartans who were tasked with getting people off the planet, trying to do what they could to save Reach. But eventually the Covenant started glassing the planet, where they would launch huge orbitable, I can't say that word, strikes from space, and a lot of people died. However, the one ship from the UNSC was able to escape, and that was the Pillar of Autumn, where the Master Chief slept, and he was the last surviving Spartan outside of June, who is one of the surviving members of Noble Team. The lore kept evolving as the series got more and more popular, as these big franchises often do. Then we had Halo 4, which introduced a new enemy. Actually, no, there was Halo 3. Halo 3, we killed the Covenant, more or less. There was a big, I can't remember whether there was like a truce, but either way, we finished the fight, and everybody thought the Halo series was going to be over. Halo 4 came around. The Master Chief is still very much alive. He's floating out in space with his AI partner Cortana. They discover something called the Shield World, which is run by the Forerunners, the guys who created the Halo rings, and more hilarity ensues. Turns out humanity has been around a lot longer than people realize, going back like millions and millions of years. We've been in space before. We've actually been knocked back in our evolution. Now, I'm getting a lot of this knowledge from an IGN video that I saw, because there's a lot of stuff in the Halo novels and comics I just didn't know about till like a few weeks ago. And it was an okay game, actually. Probably my favorite multiplayer in the series. Storyline wise, it has a really, really, really touching moment where Cortana dies. She's going through something known as AI rampancy, where in the Halo universe, when they create the AIs, after the AIs run for so long, they build up all these memories. They start building up personalities. They're essentially alive. However, being alive comes with a consequence. They start unraveling. They go through something called rampancy, and that means they effectively die. So Cortana sacrifices herself to save the Master Chief, and they have this really, really, really touching moment, and you think it's the end of Cortana. Not gonna lie, I got a little kind of tear-jerky when that happened. And then we got Halo 5 Guardians on the Xbox One, and that was a game. Basically, I don't even remember a lot of what happened in Halo 5. I remember this, though. I remember how mad it made me because Cortana, at the end of the game, if you haven't played it by now, Cortana turns into a bad guy because she takes over like Forerunner technology and thinks she can take care of the universe better than we can. So it doesn't end well for a lot of us, and AI starts to rise up. There are some other games I haven't talked about. There is Halo Wars, which I only really played the first one and not for very long. And the story just kind of goes from there. Halo has a tremendous history in novels, in comic books. There are tons of toys. But the thing that Halo will almost always be universally known for is the multiplayer. And the multiplayer has been one of those things that built Xbox Live. It's arguably the most popular game on Xbox Live, especially with Halo 2. I met a number of interesting characters on there over the years. Halo 3 would have a fairly popular multiplayer. The multiplayer beta for Reach was remarkably popular, and each iteration of the game has always had a really popular multiplayer suite. And it really kind of set the standard for what console multiplayer could be, because we did have GoldenEye in the late 1990s on the N64.
I love that game.
Yeah, and that game was fantastic, and that set the bar for what console FPS could be. And then Halo and Bungie said, okay, we can do better. And they did. And that really forced other companies to step up, because we'd eventually get the Call of Duty franchise. We get Medal of Honor and all the other countless FPSs over the years. But it's Halo that redefined multiplayer. You look at organizations such as Major League Gaming, MLG, and now you look at the COD World League, which has expanded out, and esports has never been bigger. So I think in terms of a video game franchise, lore is tremendously deep. It's interesting. But from a video game standpoint, Halo really created something wonderful and long lasting from something that should have been a forgettable sci-fi shooter, but it took itself seriously enough. The voice talent of Steve Downes as the Master Chief being so iconic created a character that was memorable, likable, funny, and never overstayed as well. And you never saw his face throughout the entire franchise. You've seen the back of his head, but you've never seen 117's face. So what do you guys think about the Halo franchise?
I can probably start.
Okay, go ahead.
I've never played it. I've never played a single one. I'll admit that. Never played a single one. I don't know anything about the plot or the world beyond that there's some kind of big mega structures involved in it. Yeah, that's it. I know it's a game.
So I have had the fortune of playing all three games. And they even had it for, because I don't have that Xbox 360 anymore that had the games. But I did end up getting, I think, Mass Effect 2 that was for free on Origin a while back, and kind of replaying it. I will say that the gameplay throughout the series does definitely get better. But so does the story. And I love the aspect that, yes, it's technically a shooter, but it's also, it kind of creates this universe that you can kind of build on the previous ones. And that's something that's not even done in anything really. And to be honest, I really enjoyed how it played and the storylines.
Yeah, I mean, like Halo, if it's done anything right, it does a lot of world building, and as the series has gone on, you do get a lot of little things filled in. Like there are terminals you can find. There are little bits of expanded lore. Just listening to the radio chatter between Cortana and the Master Chief, and you understand it, and I remember this specifically. You used to get instruction manuals with these games, and they would explain the different races within the Covenant. They'd explain how the grunts were called the Ugoi or something like that, and how they were a race that was basically made to be subservient to the Covenant, but they were like brainwashed into being mindless foot soldiers, which is why they're willing to like suicide bomb you.
What's funny about the series though is it kind of reminds me of Unreal Tournament, but it's got a story, which Unreal Tournament didn't have until the third one anyway. But it's got a story, but also it feels very natural and familiar.
Yeah, I mean, Halo is one of those franchises, at least the first 3 to 4 games is really, really accessible. Basically, the Master Chief trilogy, in my opinion, 1, 2, 3, and to an extent, ODST are very accessible to an audience. A new player could jump on at Halo Reach and then play the series straight through. The series gets a little convoluted when you get through 4, 5, and now Infinite, because now they're trying to stretch it out because they're like, oh my God, guys, we've got a cash cow here. Shut up, Siri. Sorry, I'm actually going to shut off my phone because it's being an asshole. Anyway, my phone's telling me off. It just said, really? Anyway, that aside, yeah, like Halo, as the series went on, it got a little less inviting to new players, and that's something that I really, really, really didn't like. But Steve, you're absolutely right. With the first couple of games, it allowed people to kind of get into it, allowed people to access the story. Because even at the beginning of Halo 2, you're back on Earth. You're just about to get a commendation for the events that happened in Halo 2, and then hey, the Covenant have showed up, and bad things happen, and you get these awesome missions happening on Earth where you're driving a warthog through the streets fighting a scarab, and then you randomly gets transported to a new Halo ring. Or Halo 3, at the end of Halo 2, you like launch yourself back at Earth, and you're like, what are you trying to do, sir? Finishing this fight, and then the game ends. Which, true story, when I played Halo 2 back in the mid 2000 something, I remember at the time I went to Walmart, bought the game really, really early in the morning, and I played through it in one entire day. And I get to the final mission. I fight Tartarus, who's that giant brute guy, the big guy with the hammer. And the Master Chief gets aboard that spaceship, and he's talking to Ron Perlman, or Mr. Krabs, I think. I'm pretty sure that's Mr. Krabs from SpongeBob. And no, that's Clancy Brown. Sorry, got that. Whatever. And he's talking to this general guy, and he's like, Chief, what are you doing? And he says, finishing this fight. And I'm thinking, all right, there's going to be one more level. I'm going to kick the shit out of the Covenant. Then the game rolls credits. I screamed because I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And there aren't too many video game franchises that have left me wanting more. And I can think of just one other video game franchise, and that'll be my next choice. But I'm not going to tell you what that is right now. In fact, I'm going to throw things over to Steve from Geekcast Radio, and we're going to hear his suggestion for one of the best sci-fi games, be it gameplay or lore.
So I alluded to Unreal Tournament prior to all that. So what is interesting about that series is it's actually one of the first I played after like the Doom and Duke Nukem era. And I was not entirely sure if I was going to like it or not. And I mean, basically the first game is an FPS pretty much all the way. There's really no, I mean, yeah, you have some kind of characteristics and kind of character types, but and there is a plot, but there's not much of it in that game, at least as far as I can remember. I mean, there's a human race, there's the Scarge war, which they created these respawners, so basically they could do these deathmatch tournaments and determine who's better. And so the Leandry Mining Corporation would they had these respawners, so they could basically bring people back from the dead. Basically, it's like if you mixed like a almost celebrity deathmatch with like Mutant League with some other, like first person shooter, and it's kind of that. So yeah, they had this grand tournament. So anyways, the first game, there's not much in the way of anything aside from having multiple game modes like Assault, Capture the Flag, Deathmatch, Last Man Standing, Team Deathmatch. Your typical first-person shooter games. But Unreal Tournament 2004, which, funny enough, I picked up at a like KB Toys for like $10, which this dates it, considering both are not around anymore. It kind of picks it up, and it's supposed to be the 10th year, and Malcolm, this older team of Thunder Crash, which is supposedly from the first game, is kind of the ones that you're fighting on the team of, and they have all these weird envisioned maps. Some of them are very almost flesh-like, and you have creatures that are almost borderline space orcs. But you can fly vehicles, basically everything you can do in Halo you can do in this. But it's kind of taking that, and you get to play it all online. You can do the offline, but you can play it online as well. And that, I think even to today, you can still play it online somewhere. I played it probably 4 years ago, and that was putting it a little over 10 years since it came out. And then they had a couple of other evolutions of it. But Unreal Tournament 3 is where the game really kind of got into it. You had actual voice acting involved. You had more of a stylistic change to it, more of the CG, more of the realism. It's kind of known for all of its gore and the words, like headshot or things like that. But it has a lot of different game modes. It's this particular one, you're dealing with the original Unreal Tournament people who survived the Scourge attack on the human colonies, and they're dealing with a new race called the Necrus, and they're basically like the undead, and they have this biological process with that they replace things with nanoblack, which basically infects the dead, and they become part of the other team. And it's actually pretty wild in the storyline. You play as a character called Reaper, who's basically taken down at the very beginning of the game, and he's revived, and then he's on this basically vendetta to destroy them. And you come to find out at the end that Malcolm, the guy who is the ultimate tournament guy from the very beginning of the series, ratted them out to the Necrus. And then the game ends with like your team completely dying, which is kind of a wacky cop-out, considering they never came out with another game for it until just a few years ago, where Unreal Tournament rebooted, and it's basically a free-to-play. And it says pre-alpha, and they basically upgraded all the visuals, all the storylines, everything. And it's more of just a first-person shooter now. It's not even really a storyline per se. But yeah, it's still one of my favorite series, although the newest one is so fast-paced, it makes any of the current FPSs look lame by comparison with how quickly you have to move in that game. It kills your adrenaline.
One of the things I've always associated with the Unreal brand, when I was living in my apartment in my old hometown, we used to have LAN parties to play Unreal Tournament. I don't remember which version it was, but I remember setting up network switches to play this, and I've always associated the Unreal Tournament series with like PC keyboard and mouse. So that's a big strike against it for me. I hate PCing. Don't at me.
Funny you should say that. When I I actually purchased a Xbox 360 controller years ago. Like right as soon as it came out, one of the aftermarket ones, plugged it in, and I was able to play the game with that. And so as soon as I realized that, because I was really good with keyboard and mouse on the game, like really good, insanely, like I could headshot people and didn't even without a second thought. But when I hooked up the controller, because I'd been playing, because I bought the game again, the series on my 360, and I was playing on that and on the PC. So I got pretty well, almost ambidextrous with either keyboard and mouse or the gamepad controller. And so I ended up switching completely to the controller after that. And it's kind of the same thing when I play modern FPSs like the Battlefield series. I can play it on keyboard and mouse, but my capability of turning and moving is so much better when I use a controller over using the keyboard and mouse.
Same here. I cannot play an FPS on a keyboard and mouse to save my life, yet you put me in a controller. I'm not saying I can hang with the big boys, but I played COD last night and went 30-6, so I don't think I suck.
Better than me on whenever I play those kinds of games.
I probably take the whole shooting thing probably a little too seriously. It's probably not healthy. But
I just like blowing up buildings, so that's my favorite thing to do.
One of the things I've always appreciated about the Unreal Tournament series, as it always seemed to push its levels of ridiculousness. I think it was Unreal Tournament 2003. I remember their maps being very, very open. Mm-hmm. And I remember their guns and their gravity being very, very unique amongst shooters at the time. Like the only other thing I could think of remarkably similar might have been Quake, maybe.
They kind of came out around the same time, Quake and the original Unreal Tournament, but after the first Unreal Tournament, it went from this darkish game to more of a more vibrantly colored series, at least until it went to Unreal Tournament 3, and then it got super dark again. It's still vibrant colors, but it's not as brightly colored as like 2004 was.
Yeah, like Unreal Tournament has a certain art direction and aesthetic to it that I always associate it with early 2000s PC gaming, and I think that's kind of its charm, although I didn't know there were story-based pieces to it until you told me about it. Like, that's how much it stuck with me. Like, to me, Unreal Tournament was the LAN game you played with your friends. Like, I had many pizza parties at my house where we'd stay up till like 3-4 in the morning and just play Unreal Tournament, Quake, and Rainbow Six. But Unreal was the fast-paced game. I mean, some of us played Counter-Strike, sure, but Unreal was that goofy weapons, goofy physics, ridiculousness.
Oh, yeah. It was crazy.
Yeah, and that's what made the series really charming. It wasn't like Half-Life, which Half-Life you could mod the shit out of and do things to.
Oh, you can mod this too.
But Unreal Tournament embraced its different origins at first, I think.
Yeah,
kind of looking at
it. It totally did, and I actually used to have so many add-ons for the game where I could change literally almost any aspect of the game. I think I have it backed up on some hard drive somewhere, but I used to reskin the characters. I think I ran around as Optimus Prime or Megatron 90% of the time. And there was like a ton you could do with it. I made it so that you could have jetpacks. Like, you didn't even need to grab the flying vehicle. And that was awesome. It was also a detriment because if you played the game with somebody that had that, you could get sniped in the air.
So I guess, I don't know, any other further thoughts on the Unreal franchise, guys?
Nope.
All right. So I guess kind of moving right along, we've kind of stuck with FPS and shooters. And I know Aaron, because Aaron is the Renaissance man and more educated than me or Steve. What do you got for us?
Well, I'm going to go with a video game that was probably the first video game outside of an arcade that I played, and it stuck with me all these years, and that's Starflight. It was a
Never
PC
heard of
game. It was a PC game that was released in 1987. So that's going to say something about this. It came on two 5 1/4 floppy disks. And when I say that it gave you a universe on 2 floppy disks, I mean it. Basically, it gave you a big area of space to explore. It had about 270 star systems and around 800 planets that you could explore, and every single one of those planets you could land on. Some would kill you if you landed on them, but you could land on them, and they were all explorable fully. This was impressive for just 2 floppy disks, right? But to give a little bit of background about the game itself, it's the 47th century, and humans are on a planet called Arth, not Earth. And Earth has kind of become a legendary world. It's not that humans have spread out throughout the galaxy. It's that, well, humans had been spread out, but now they're really not. They've all kind of fallen back after the fall of the old Earth Empire. And there's a whole bunch of different other alien races in the region, and some of them you can hire for the crew of your ship. And your ship, you can name whatever you want to have it named. You mine minerals and scan life forms on planetary surfaces and can upgrade your starship to have better engines, better weapons, shields, more cargo pods so you can transport more goods. So the first game actually even can be slightly about, trading, a trading game, but it's mostly exploration. And the plot centers around the fact that worlds near the core of the galaxy are just being killed. Their stars are going nova for no good reason. And you're having to figure out why, because as the game goes on, there is a time limit. The time goes forward as you travel through space and explore. And at some point, Earth's star is going to go nova. And you need to figure out what's causing all this stuff and find artifacts from the old Earth Empire. You need to trade and get information from all these different species, some of them hostile. You need to explore these worlds and just find little slips of paper that are on libraries on Earth once you find Earth. And there is no more life on Earth in this game either. It's a fascinating game, and for coming on 2 floppy disks, I played it for years and still didn't find every little loose thread that was in it. It would go on to inspire a lot of the future games like Star Control that a lot of people probably recognize. It did have a sequel called Starflight 2. Trade Routes of the Cloud Nebula, I think is what it was called. And it was much more focused on trading, and there wasn't really a time limit. So you could really kind of get deep into the weeds with that game. But yeah, I absolutely adore Starflight. And if anyone thinks that, hey, look, this looks like fairly clunky graphics because, yeah, it's 1987, I'll agree. It is pretty clunky. But the gameplay is there. The story is there. And I really don't want to talk more about the story without ruining things for people that do want to play it. But you can find tons of images online of what Starflight looks like. You level up your crew. Your crew you can name, so you have you can make even little stories for yourself, like role playing, right? But yeah, God, I love the game so much, and probably very few people around have played it at this point. But it was extremely popular back in the day. It was even ported over to the Sega Genesis in 1991.
Really?
Yeah. And it was not as good. It was basically the same content, and it looked newer. The graphics were better, but I don't think the gameplay was as good because I don't know. It just felt different, even though I think everything else was the same in the game except for the graphics. It just felt different.
That's phenomenal. Just the fact that that's how much could be accomplished given the computing power at the time. I mean, the only other game I could think that felt as expansive, at least as far as I understand, because I'm not a big old school PC gamer. I know the Ultimate games were very expansive for their time, but they were also were fairly graphically intensive. This sounds like it didn't have a lot of graphic memory to work with, but it could use a lot of text, which means you could squeeze a lot of text on those 5 1/4 floppies.
Yeah, and there was graphics. Like there was even 3D graphics in the game. So when you would land on a planet, you could pick the coordinates that you would land at, and then your ship would land, and you would come in towards the surface and actually see landforms that were really there, because the whole planetary surface was like mapped for each one of these worlds that you could land on. So you would see the 3D graphics of it. Yes, it was very chunky, I will admit, but it was all there. Like there was graphics to it that were pretty advanced for the time.
It sounds almost like it sounds like something that probably inspired the team that made No Man's Sky.
No Man's Sky has, yeah, it does have some similarities. I would say there is some like genes from Starflight that go into No Man's Sky. Like I said, Star Control, the people that made Star Control were directly inspired by Starflight. Yeah, God, there is even in this game, there's an ecological generator, like an ecosystem generator for this game. So when you would land on a planet, it would generate all the life forms for you to find, and they would each have niches. And some would be like aggressive carnivores that would actually attack your little your terrain vehicle. There's, herbivores that would just be kind of slow and you could easily capture them without having to stun them. There were small creatures that were difficult to capture but weren't really aggressive. I mean, very, very detailed stuff that would come out of this. And capturing animals, that was a completely legitimate gameplay to gain credits to upgrade your ship. You didn't have to mine, but mining was one of the easier ways of dealing with gaining credits. You can still find the game for sale. Let me see. I think I have it bookmarked. I will find it at some point. GOG.com actually sells Starflight 1 and 2 right now for $5.99.
Well, if you've got the price of a hot and ready pizza from Little Caesars, this sounds like something you'd probably get a fair chunk of entertainment value in. I mean, especially if you're interested in the history of early PC gaming, and especially something that gives you that universal sandbox to kind of play with. If you're willing to take a look at where things like No Man's Sky had come from, then this is probably something worth kind of checking out.
As I said, I probably put years worth of time into the game, both of the games put together. I mean, they really made an impact on me.
That's pretty cool, man. Steve, any thoughts on this? Like, have you ever heard of this?
No, I have not, but it sounds pretty interesting.
So I guess kind of moving right along and actually kind of keeping with the theme of space, which is going to be a common theme in this show, but I promise you. We're going to swing back to me. And the other franchise that I want to talk about PC gaming, or not PC gaming franchise as a whole. This one should come as no surprise, so much so that it's tattooed on my right arm. And that is EA and BioWare's Mass Effect. This series hit the Xbox 360 back in 2007, I want to say, spawned Mass Effect 1, Mass Effect 2, Mass Effect 3, and Mass Effect Andromeda, which came out on Xbox One and PS4 and PC, to an interesting response, we'll say. But the franchise essentially, you star as Commander Shepard, be you a male Shep or Femme Shep, which is my Shepard, voiced by Mark Meir or Jennifer Hale, and you are on a mission to, I can't remember the name of the planet at the beginning, but you are set up to be the first human Spectre, to basically represent humanity to the Citadel Council of alien races that you've met after the First Contact War. Basically, you find these things known as the mass relays out past Pluto, and it allows near instantaneous travel across vast swaths of the Milky Way galaxy. And we meet a race called the Turians. It doesn't go so well for us, but eventually a ceasefire is declared and everybody starts to get along after all. However, not a lot of people in the galaxy like humanity. They see us as too ambitious. They see us as problematic, and you run into races like the Asari, very beautiful blue-skinned humanoids who are almost, actually I'm pretty sure they're entirely female, and they produce in a way, I think they talk about it in the novels, but they can have sex with literally anything, and that's how they reproduce. There are races like the Quarians who live inside environmental suits because they've had to live on ships aboard a flotilla for so long that they left their home planet of Rannoch. They're not used to being around viruses. They're not used to being around other life forms. So they live inside these biological suits their entire lives because a common cold could kill them. A cut could kill them. There are races known as the Krogan, this huge warlike race who were uplifted by a smart race known as the Solarians. They were uplifted to fight a race known as the Rachni, basically giant alien bugs. And there are other races across the Mass Effect galaxy, but the first game focuses on Commander Shepard, and he's trying to warn everybody about a intergalactic threat known as the Reapers. You are fighting back against a former Spectre turned bad guy known as Saren, and he's aiding the Reapers in coming towards the Citadel. They want to wipe out all sentient life in the Milky Way galaxy. It is in their programming. And it's up to you and your crew assembled from across the galaxy, a Turian named Garrus, a Quarian named Tally, an Asari named Liara, a Krogan named Rex. I don't think I'm leaving anybody out there. And it's up to you and your crew to save the universe. And eventually it all culminates with an attack on the Citadel with one Reaper, and it takes the combined forces of Earth's fleet and what races from the Citadel. And the cool thing about Mass Effect is it takes a lot into effect about choice. The choices you make, the alliances you make, the good, bad, indifferent choices all impact the galaxy. And the cool thing that Mass Effect did that I don't see many games doing, in fact, I think Mass Effect is still the first. The choices you make in the first game will impact the second game. Your save, your character carries over, and so on and so forth. Mass Effect 2 starts off with, they kill Commander Shepard. You die. You are dead. And an organization known as Cerberus resurrects you, a human supremacist group, I might add, resurrects you because they need the best of what humanity has to offer, because a race known as the Collectors has been kidnapping and destroying entire colonies out, and I can't remember, in the Terminus systems out in the Mass Effect galaxy, a more lawless part of space, the more wild part of the Milky Way galaxy. And things need to be dealt with because the council doesn't want to believe it. They write you off. They're like, Commander Shepard's back, but we don't want to talk to you. So Cerberus and a guy played by Martin Sheen, who is an amazing actor in this. He plays a character known as the Elusive Man, the head of Cerberus. And he says, I've given you unlimited money, unlimited resources. Build your team. Stop the Collectors. Humanity must be saved. And at first, you think he's a good dude. You then find out the Collectors are working for the Reapers. And that's not good. They're basically acting as agents for the Reapers to prepare us for the arrival. Basically, and the arrival is when the Reapers will eventually come to the Milky Way galaxy, and it's game over for everybody. They don't care who you are. They will wipe out all sentient life, as they are programmed to do, every 50,000 years, and then the cycle repeats. So Commander Shepard has to go off in this suicide mission to go through the I forget what the relay is called, but you go to the home world of the Collectors. You fight a human Reaper, and because the collector, or not the collectors, the Reapers, they take elements of different creatures and they transform them. They corrupt them. Like when they corrupt a human, they get turned into what's called a husk, stuff like that. And you find out they do that to other races. Like I think the collectors were once a race known as the Protheans, if I remember right. I'm going a lot off of memory here.
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, so it ends with you destroying the collector base, and you come back and you are held as a war criminal because reasons. You are arrested on Earth and you are sent to prison. You are locked up and your crew disbands and everybody scatters to the winds. And then one day on Earth, you're just about to go to see somebody, I think Admiral Anderson, played by, I can't remember the actor's name now, and that's going to drive me crazy. He's the voice of the U.S. Navy. Keith David, I want to say.
Yep, he played Goliath in Gargoyles, too.
Yeah, so awesome voice, most powerful voice. Love this guy. So you are about to see him, and then the Reapers come to Earth. The Reapers have smashed through every defense system leading to Earth. The Reapers have invaded the Milky Way galaxy. They've wiped out a race known as the Batarians, which if you played the Mass Effect DLC known as The Arrival, you have to try and save the Batarian system, but you have to go back and rescue a scientist behind enemy lines. But point of the matter is, they were the first system hit by the Reapers. They stood no chance. They were almost entirely wiped out. The Reapers don't care. They are corrupting everybody. They corrupt the Asari, the Krogan. And while this is going on, there is another civil war happening. Because, you know, I mentioned those Quarians, people who live in the suits. Well, a little bit of backstory. They created a race of sentient AI known as the Geth. The Geth are essentially Mass Effect's version of the Borg. Robots. They were designed to be a slave labor force until one day they basically said, I think, therefore I am. They determined they wanted to have lives. They didn't like where things were going, and they kicked their creator's ass and sent them off world. So now the Reapers have allied with the Geth. However, Commander Shepard has met a friendly Geth known as Legion. You met him in Mass Effect 2. He's one of the last crew members you can recruit. And you find out there's a section of the Geth that don't like the Reapers. They know they're being used. So they want to take a piece of the Reapers and upload the Reapers' intelligence to themselves so they can be free. They upload the old machine code. But to do that, the Quarians are like, no, you can't do that. They'll kill us. And you have to make the decision. Do you uphold your alliance with the Quarians and wipe out the Geth when they're weakest? Or are you willing to stick it out on a limb, trust the Geth aren't going to stab you in the back when they become free because you've been killing them across 3 games now, and will they join you? And those choices matter. And if you choose the wrong thing in here, one of your crew members can kill themselves. Callie will throw herself right off a cliff, which I have only ever watched that scene on YouTube. I can't do that to her because Tally is life. But the series all comes to an end as you have to unite a galaxy to fight the Reapers, and you make your stand at Earth as you're trying to build an ancient Prothean device known as the Crucible. The device's plans have been left behind by races long before you in cycles that have tried to stand up against the Reapers before and lost. But now, with the races united, with the Solarians, the Quarians, the Geth, everybody, we make our stand at Earth. And it's a huge, giant battle. And one Reaper almost wiped out the entirety of Earth's fleets. Now there's like 10,000 of them. What are you going to do? So the series comes to a head. The Reapers have taken the Citadel to Earth. And Shepard comes to the Citadel, and it turns out Cerberus is being used by the Reapers. They've been indoctrinated. That's something I forgot to mention in all this. The Reapers can turn you against your own people. They often corrupt you. They tempt you, but ultimately you end up serving them. They've corrupted the elusive man, believing he can control the Reapers. Here's a hint: he can't. So you go to confront him on the Citadel, and if you've made all the right choices all along the way, you can actually have the elusive man blow his own head off, which is immensely satisfying. But as you reach at the center of the Crucible, you are met by a mysterious entity that then gives you 3 choices. Control, where you must sacrifice everything that you are as Commander Shepard, but the Reapers are now yours to control. You can choose to destroy them, but in doing so, you destroy all synthetic life, including an AI, which has become your friend, known as Edie, who actually existed in the first game, but wasn't a controllable crew member. She was just an AI that lived on the moon, I think, but was actually given a body later on, was given a body in Mass Effect 3, and she was your ship's computer in Mass Effect 2. Or, if you've made all the right choices all throughout the game, you can choose a third option. Synthesis, where you combined organic life and synthetic life. Again, you sacrifice everything that you are. Or there's even a fourth hidden choice. You can choose to shoot this creature in the face, and then everybody dies, and the cycle begins again. So depending on your choices, depending on how you've played these 3 games, it all comes down to 4 choices. What do you do? So the canonical ending for Mass Effect has never been defined, because that's the beauty of Mass Effect. It is an RPG where you are in control. More people have accused the third entry of being very kind of railroady, and they're not wrong to a certain extent, but it is your story. It is your Commander Shepard, your decisions. And then we lead into Mass Effect Andromeda, which takes us back a little bit before the events of Mass Effect 3. So the elusive man and other entities and the Citadel Council, basically anybody who's anybody in the Milky Way, knows the Reapers are real. They know something is wrong. Shit. What are we going to do? So they build ships, arcs. They're like, okay, we need the best, we need the brightest, but we need volunteers. So they fill up all these ships with people, and they take, they spin up their FTL drives, and they aim it towards the Andromeda Galaxy. The problem is this journey will take 600 years. So in case humanity dies and the Milky Way is wiped out, something will survive, but they'll never see their families again. So you play as Sarah Ryder or Alec Ryder, the son or daughter of Alec Ryder, who is what's known as a Pathfinder. The Pathfinder Initiative is, I think, what the project's called. And your goal is to colonize the Andromeda Galaxy, the Helix Cluster, I think it's called. So you go to the Helix Cluster. After 600 years, you get there. Shit goes immediately wrong. The planet that was supposed to be in a life zone that you saw through a Geth telescope 600 years ago, it's deadly. You can't breathe the air. It'll kill you. There's lightning everywhere. You can't live there. It's a hostile planet. When you get to the Andromeda Galaxy, your ship is immediately disabled. You crash into some kind of an energy anomaly. You don't know what it is. The other arcs that came with you, the Asari arc, the Turian arc, the Quarian arc, the arc that held other races like the Volus. I can't remember what Thane's race was. All these other races, you don't know where they are. But the races, the ship that you were on is actually not the first one to arrive in Andromeda. Or sorry, you were woken up a little bit later, sorry. So other factions that were on the ship that woke up before you have left. So now there's people who stayed aboard your ship and people who have formed a renegade faction along with whoever happened to be on your ship it's already a galaxy divided. There are Krogan, there are humans, there are Asari, there are other races that have made homes on other planets, and they're not very happy with you. So it's up to you as the new Pathfinder to find new worlds to unite a new galaxy. But now there's another threat known as the Ket, and they don't like you. They want to transform and kill anything that gets in their way. You find out that they are taking over a race called, I think they're called the Angara, I think. You run across a guy named Jal, and he joins your crew at one point. And you fight against these things. Honestly, Andromeda is not a very good game, which is sad because the gameplay is fantastic, but the storyline's very generic. It's like, I'm evil for the sake of being evil, and you can't understand me because rawr, I have monsters and robots and shit. But that's where Mass Effect kind of went off the rails. Now, where Mass Effect excels, I think, is there's been a wonderful series of comics by Dark Horse Comics. There are 2 omnibuses for it available. There are 2 or 3 novels written about the First Contact War, the Elusive Man, I think, and they're written by people directly involved with the Mass Effect franchise, and they are considered canon. So if you've been following the franchise, it gives you a little bit of insight into the Elusive Man, into Admiral Anderson, and stuff like that, without conflicting with the information that your Shepard would know, because, you know, it's meant to be your adventure. These are other characters. These are side characters that you're supposed to know. And Mass Effect, if it's done anything right, it meshes far future technology and world building, but with heartfelt characters. BioWare is known very well for writing dramatic stories. It's had massive success with its Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic video games, Jade Empire, a little less to Anthem. In fact, the less we say about that game series, the better. But Mass Effect is where things hit home. It had really believable romances, likable characters. When people die, when choices are made, you really feel them. You get connected to your characters. And the series really opened the door for more interactive role playing that could be done on a console, which is, I think, going to be the lasting legacy of Mass Effect, is that it made choice and character relationships mean something, because you had that dialogue choice wheel, not unlike something you'd see out of like Fallout, where you'd have different kind of dialogue choices. Here you could choose, is that a Paragon choice, or is that a Renegade choice? And the system for dialogue and its effects would evolve over time. A little less so in Andromeda. It became a little more ambiguous, but still, it still came down to what's the tone of how you want to determine this like conversation. So the worlds of Mass Effect is some of my favorite in sci-fi. In fact, Mass Effect is probably second only to Star Wars in terms of my favorite sci-fi franchises. I like it better than Star Trek. I like it better than Doctor Who, and that says a lot, because I'm a big sci-fi nerd.
Bold statements.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I never expected a video game to have that much world building in it, and that impressed me. Like Fem Shep, I didn't fall in love with her because she was a beautiful woman. I fell in love with her because I created this character in my mind. This is my playthrough. This is my canonical Shep. In the first game, you have to make a decision on a planet called Vermeer, and you have to leave one of your crew members to stay behind. It's a choice between a guy named Caden or a girl named Ashley. In my playthrough, I was romantically involved with a guy named Caden as the femshep. I chose him to stay behind on Vermeer to save Ashley. So in my canonical playthrough, in Mass Effect 1, femshep loses a very important part of her. She loses her boyfriend or more. In Mass Effect 2, after she dies and her life is shattered, she has to find her friends again. In that game, you can romance a character named Garrus, who is a Turian. And that character and her, in my canonical playthrough, they fall in love very, very, very deeply. And because they're both soldiers, they've both lost things. Like Garrus lost all his unit. He's been betrayed by his friends. Whereas Shep lost what may have been the love of her life, and she's learning to love again. In Mass Effect 3, when once again they've been separated because she was in jail, they find each other and they fight side by side to save the galaxy. And just as you're about to complete the final mission, you can have a moment with each crew member. And Garrus says something to you along the lines of, we're going into hell together, but if you're going to die, be in heaven 30 minutes before the devil knows you're dead, or something like that. And there's another great line, something like, there is no shepherd without Vicarion. And I just saw in my headcanon this great romance of these two people, these two soldiers, utterly in love, devoted to each other, but knowing that the ultimate sacrifice may have to be made. And I haven't come across a relationship, and maybe I'm playing this up in my own head, as powerful as this, that I got to be a part of and shape the direction of. I mean, sure, there's been some great romances in sci-fi, but this is the one that I connected with. And when Mass Effect 3 ended, especially when they added the extended scenes, you do get to say goodbye to your romantic partner if they're with you on the final mission just before you get up to the Citadel or the Crucible or whatever the hell it is. And I wanted, and I think that's why Mass Effect connected with me so much more than some of these franchises. I mean, Star Wars I love because of the depth of its lore, the weapons, the technology, and it was a part of what shaped me into a sci-fi geek. Mass Effect made me appreciate sci-fi as a genre on a whole different level, whereas Star Trek, don't get me wrong, I like it. Do I love it? I don't know, because Voyager is my favorite series, and I don't know what that says about me. With all that essay I just gave you on Mass Effect, Steve, it is now your go.
I like Mass Effect. I played the first 3 games, and they were great.
What did you like about, like, basically, like, when you look at it, what does Mass Effect say as a franchise? What does it say about its gameplay?
I just liked how you could connect the story, and choices you made in the story affected the outcome.
Yeah, because it's something that, as far as I understand, has never been done in a game franchise before. And it was very groundbreaking to me that I got a chance to shape a universe, a narrative that was unique to me, how my playthrough was my playthrough. And I wasn't just, it wasn't Halo where, oh, I've killed the Flood, I guess I'm going to the Pillar of Autumn to blow up the engines. And yeah, there's some set pieces, but it's the relationships that made Mass Effect to me. And that's something sci-fi, or it's something a video game hasn't made me care about. I haven't cared about relationships in a game, really. The only other game that's maybe done that in the last couple of years would be the Persona series. Like, I must date best girl because I want to make these virtual characters fall in love with me. And maybe it's an emotional fulfillment issue. Maybe I'm exposing something about myself right now, but I think Mass Effect has done that in spades. I think in a lot of ways it fulfills an emotional need in sci-fi. Yeah, it's got cool battles and monsters and robots and weapons, but there's heart to it, and I think that's something special. Aaron, do you have any experience with the Mass Effect franchise?
I do. I've played the first 3 games. I enjoyed the first and second, and I enjoyed the third about halfway through it, and then I got angry.
Yeah,
as a lot of other people did. And it angered me so much I haven't been able to even look at Mass Effect since.
Well, Andromeda's not good. I'll tell you that much.
But honestly, 2, I loved 2. But it wasn't for like the relationship. I like the story. I like the story. I like kind of the settings that they had. I thought the gameplay was good. Hey, it was a good game. But yeah, 3 really burnt me.
Yeah, 3, I'll admit, was not for like everybody. And the thing, I think 3 did something special because I think they sourced this to a different team. Is they had multiplayer on 3 to talk about the gameplay. I mean, obviously, I've talked about relationships. Mass Effect 1 had kind of shitty shooting mechanics. I mean, all things considered, and its loot system was really kind of boggy to the point where it was annoying to pick up new armor and weapons. Mass Effect 2 got it down to a T. Mind you, you couldn't move very fast, so that's me as a Twitch gamer kind of exposing my my privilege, I guess. Mass Effect 3 felt the best combat-wise to me. Plus being able to throw out power so quickly. You could equip any weapon to any class, which was great. But you're not wrong. Mass Effect 3 burned a lot of people because it took away some choice and its gameplay did suffer in places. But I think it's going to go down as one of those franchises that is important in the space of computer and console gaming. I think, especially in terms of newer franchises that have come out in the last 20 years, I think it's very, very important. There have been some, as I did mention, there are comics. There is one movie, which is called Mass Effect Paragon Lost, which was put out by Funimation a couple of years ago, which takes place just before Mass Effect 3, which features James Vega, voiced by, it's going to bother me now. Freddie Prinze Jr., who's a surprisingly good voice actor, I might add, because he's awesome in Star Wars Rebels. So anyway, continuing on, I think, Steve, I think it's your go.
Alrighty, so my next one is the Transformers games. And I know it's kind of a cop-out considering I run a podcast about Transformers, but what I like about it and what's awesome about it is because it's sentient robots. And how can you get much cooler than that? So I've played a variety of the games. My first introduction to the video games of Transformers, and I'm going to kind of give a Reader's Digest version of this, but I started with the Beast Wars Transformers game, which was my introduction into the Transformers franchise. That game came out in 97, and I still have the CD. It's unbearable to play at this point.
Oh, God, yeah. It's bad.
It's a bad third-person shooting game that was on the PC and the PlayStation, and you play these extra-dimensional aliens called the Skrix, which had no basis in the show. It's just like, hey, let's just theme a game with Transformers characters and then have them say in really bad voiceover, maximize or terrorize. And it was so blocky in 90s. It was ridiculous. And I could never get past the first or second level in that game, and I haven't tried to go back. What I did like was this was one of the first games I played online. And mind you, this was back in the dial-up days, so my dad's phone line would be consistently taken up by the fact I was playing Beast Wars on it. They had the MSN Gaming Zone, and I don't know if anybody remembers that, but
oh yeah,
you could play a 4-person battle, on this game, and I would stay up for hours playing this. The game play itself was pretty non-existent for this. I mean, you basically had to rescue certain characters. It follows the Maximals Predacons just like normal, and so it follows some of what the actual game comes out as, but it's not nearly as good as it should have been. But then you get to Transformers Armada, or in the 2004, which was nearly 7 years later. And this kind of totally changed the Transformers franchise on the PlayStation 2. And they were no longer blocky. They were no longer really that terrible to look at. The game was difficult, but you get some beautiful scenery. You get some beautiful colors in there. There's even at the end, you get to be Prime with a jetpack going against Unicron, like flying around orbit, shooting at Unicron, which is awesome on more ways than one. And you have to fly into his maw. Like it's crazy. But the whole premise of the game is you are collecting minicons to destroy Unicron, and you fight all of the various Decepticons. And it was very, very difficult to play. And then fast forward 6 more years, and we got the High Moon Studios games, the Transformers War for Cybertron and Fall of Cybertron, which quite honestly were the pinnacle of Transformers games. They were not only up to par with a lot of the... It fits very well with the current Netflix series, let's put it that way, as far as the aesthetics. And they used the voice acting from some of the characters. You get to play as Autobots and Decepticons, some of the major characters. And the first game, they're literally fighting for Cybertron, and you destroy Megatron by the end of the game. And then in the second game, in Fall of Cybertron, they're trying to leave Cybertron, and you get to play as like Grimlock and some of the other characters, and they actually rebuild Megatron, and you can play as him again. But both games are just beautifully done. A lot to do in them, a lot of weird creatures. You get to see robots bigger than you, such as Metroplex, and the storylines on them, it would take me too long to go through them all, but they were very entertaining, a lot of fun. The boss battles on it were not they were not bad, but there were some that it seemed like they dragged on a little too long. And then getting to the Transformers Devastation game, which I've also played, that one's more of a entirely different beast, but it uses more of the cell shading and is more of a homage to the Generation 1 continuity, and kind of fills that void of wanting to see some of that come into play. But overall, those 3 games, the Transformers War for Cybertron, Fall of Cybertron, and Devastation, are quite possibly some of my favorite Transformer games that have been out thus far.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you there. Those are probably the strongest Transformers games that have come out. There have been other Transformers games with varying degrees of success. In fact, little piece of trivia for you. The first game I ever reviewed professionally as a games journalist, very, very early on in my career, was the original Transformers game for the Nintendo Wii, I want to say. I think it was. Or maybe it was Xbox 360. Either way, it was Bayformers. It sucked, and I was very young and very stupid.
I played those too, and I didn't mention them for a specific reason.
Because they are shitty.
They're garbage.
However, though, that being said, there was a Bayformers game that was a tie-in to Age of Extinction called Rise of the Dark Spark,
which was done by High Moon.
High Moon. I've got a soft spot for that game. I actually kind of enjoy it. I guess because I wanted Transformers something. Although the one by Platinum Games, which was Transformers Devastation, there is a lot of fan service in that. I think if you play you can play as Wheeljack or somebody, right? Can't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because there's one point you're jumping in a level, and there's some dialogue that happens, and it foreshadows your death in Transformers the movie. And I was thinking, okay, that's a deep cut, and that is fantastic. And because Platinum Games are known for their fast-paced gameplay, I used to love speed running that game. And because you can upgrade your character with different abilities and different points, I used to love replaying the last fight up to Megatron and just bulldozing everybody. I'm thinking, all right, I've kicked the shit out of Devastator in or the Constructicons. It's been about 1 minute and 30 seconds. I am awesome. Stuff like that, or just fighting Megatron. And it brought back so many voice actors for it too. And it was such a lovely homage. Though the High Moon Studios games, War and Fall of Cybertron, you want storyline, you go for those. Although there are new Transformers games in development, they're going to be terrible. There's one coming out soon. I can't remember what it's called for the life of me. But there was a trailer for it this year. It's so forgettable. It looks like a mobile game that got ported. Why you would pay money for this is beyond me. Aaron, what about you? Have you ever played any of the Transformers games?
See, no, I have not. I seem to be like the odd guy out with a lot of these. Not that I'm not a console gamer, or, you know, because I do play on the console. I do play on PC. I just never played a Transformers game. Never really had the urge to. I'm sorry to say.
No, like, you know what? I think it's a certain slice of gamers that like kind of fall into it. I mean, unless Transformers was on your radar as a kid,
or it was.
In your life.
I love the original cartoon. Absolutely loved it.
If I were to recommend one game to you to play out of all the entirety of all the Transformers games that have ever existed, I would recommend Devastation. However, that being said, finding a copy is going to be hard because it has been delisted from every digital storefront, and the only way you can get it is unless it's already on your digital accounts, or you can find a physical copy. But it is absolutely worth it. It is fast-paced. It is fun. It has a low barrier of entry, and it looks like you're playing an episode of the G1 cartoon.
Yes, I've been playing it.
I mean, seems like it would be fun. I'm sorry that I've never had the chance to play any of them.
I will find a way. So that being said, let's go to you, Aaron. What is your next pick for some good sci-fi games?
Okay, so my next pick is also pretty non-standard. I would assume, compared to what everybody else is talking about, and I'm going to say it is a game that has no plot, and I love it. And it's Kerbal Space Program. Yes, it is sci-fi because you get to build your own rockets, design your own space program, go to different worlds with little green men that have giant heads and googly eyes and funny voices. And if there is one thing that you can play to learn real physics, real rocketry, it's this game. And then you can get mods for it, on PC, obviously, that will add in near future type of engines and systems, and they're fairly realistic for the game for what it is. Yeah, the solar system is fairly small compared to Earth's solar system. Kerbal, the planet that you start off on, is smaller than Earth. But the game has infinite replayability just because, hey, I want to have a challenge of where I launch a rocket into space only using RCS thrusters. You can do it. It takes a lot of engineering, but you can do it. Hey, I want to fly all the way from Kerbal, which is basically Earth, to Pluto, the furthest planet that's in the Kerbal system, whatever it's called, Elu. And I want to do it with only solid rocket boosters. You can do it. You get to do all the math. You get to figure it out. And the thing is that you don't even need to do the math to play the game properly. It's trial and error. And if you build a rocket that sucks and it blows up, well, it looks great blowing up. And you learn from your mistake, and you slowly are able to build rockets. Just like in real life, the rockets blow up, and you learn from your mistakes, and you're able to get into orbit. And then getting into orbit is just the first step. Then it's time to go to the moon. Maybe it's time to build a space station. Maybe it's time to build a giant orbital fuel depot. Maybe you want to try to figure out how to send a probe across every single planet in the Kerbal solar system using only gravitational slingshots. You can do it. It's all there, and it's freaking fun. I've probably put in 2,000 hours to playing this game, and I'm not bored with it. And they're going to release a second one fairly soon, Kerbal Space Program 2. It's amazing. I don't know. I can only talk good things about it.
I remember seeing some people talk about this. I know I've seen some of my friends stream this. I think my friend Dr. Terawatt has streamed it on like his Twitch channel. And I never knew what it was about other than it used real life rocketry and real life physics. And I don't consider myself that smart when it comes to math stuff. I can talk myself out of a problem. You ask me to solve a math problem, I'm probably going to die. But I always thought it was a really neat idea. And I've only really started PC gaming in the last year. So maybe it might be something I could check out because there's one other program or game, I guess you could call it a game. Have you ever heard of something called Universe Simulator?
Universe Sandbox? Yeah.
Yeah, that thing's fun.
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've seen it. I don't own it. But yeah, it does look like it's a lot of fun just from a physics standpoint. But remember what I said about Kerbal Space Program. You honestly don't need to know math to do it well. You learn on the fly. And I've never sat down with a calculator when playing the game. I never do. I just kind of eyeball it like the Kerbals do, because the Kerbals are just, funny little guys. You don't think they're doing math with how crazy they are, but you eyeball it and you slowly start building up a good knowledge of how orbital mechanics work. And then suddenly you're realizing, man, I actually know how to do gravitational, assist flybys. And you're doing it kind of in your head and eyeballing it. And when you suddenly realize you're doing that, well, wow, this game has actually taught me something. It's one of those games where one of the strange things about orbital mechanics is that if you want to slow down, you actually, if you want to catch up to somebody, you actually try to slow down to do it, because you'll drop into a lower orbit and thus speed up and catch up to somebody in the orbit ahead of you. So to speed up, you slow down. It's one of those weird things in orbital mechanics that no one ever really understands properly, but the game shows once you get into orbit. It's counterintuitive and it's brilliant. Yeah, it's sci-fi because you can build crazy nuclear-powered spacecraft to tool around the solar system with. But man, I cannot recommend this game enough.
See, that's something I had no idea about until you mentioned it. And I used to think of myself a guy who understood spaceflight. Yep, nope. So that is really cool. And I love things that encourage learning like that encourage experimentation, that encourage you to expand your horizons, think outside the box, but have some fun while kind of doing it. I mean, as you mentioned, you don't have to be pulling out your pocket calculator and doing graphs or anything, but that is neat how you have to figure things out like that. And as you said, eyeball it and just kind of figure it out. I guess with kind of that in mind, I'd probably give it a whirl. I mean, I'd like to watch a few people play it so I can kind of not feel like an idiot the first time out.
Oh yeah, there's tons of YouTube channels out there that show like how to play Kerbal Space Program, and they'll show you how to fail at it. And the failure is part of the fun of the game. Like just having your rockets explode into thousands of pieces. Some people call it rapid unexpected disassembly. When you crash, you aren't crashing into a planet. You're doing constructive lithobraking. You're braking, when at Mars, when probes go to Mars, you aerobrake, you brake by using the atmosphere to slow down. Well, lithobraking is just braking with rocks. So advanced lithobraking is a crash. Yeah, anyway, the game is just a lot of fun.
I don't know, Steve, does this sound like something you'd probably check out?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'd have to see somebody play it to see whether I'd be interested or not.
Okay, so I guess with that in mind, we're going to do a lightning round. Oh my God, Mike's changing the rules. Okay, pick one thing and maybe succinctly explain it in 2 minutes or less. Another honorable mention that you think is a fantastic game franchise or something you should check out from the PC games. And I'm going to recommend a franchise yet again. And this is a franchise that Aaron has actually written for. And I'm going to mention Battletech or Mech Warrior. Finding the games on PC is a little bit of a trick, but there is Mech Warrior Online. Mech Warrior 5 Mercenaries launched last November, so you can play that. There is Mech Assault on the Xbox. And the main reason I recommend it is the gameplay. It's amazing mech gameplay. It's very sim while still feeling kind of arcadey at the same time. Not like Titanfall arcadey, but to me, what gets me is the lore. The lore for BattleTech blows me away. You don't have to be a fan of any one particular age if you don't want to be. I mean, Aaron knows I love the clan invasion, but if you want to be a fan of the Succession Wars, you can check those out. You can check out the Star League, and there's data and lore there to support it. So that's a series of games I really recommend you check out. They're fantastically fun, and it's awesome. There's even a tabletop role-playing game. There's a war game for it as well. So if you
That's
don't...
what I write for.
Yeah, so there are many options for you guys to check out, and I can't speak about the praises of BattleTech enough because it's one of those franchises that I've loved for years and I keep wanting to learn more about. So I guess very quickly, thoughts from Aaron and Steve. What do you guys think about the BattleTech franchise?
I write for it. So of course I like it. Of course I know a lot about it, and I do recommend it.
Steve, what about you?
I've played stuff kind of like that before in the past. Just can't remember the name of the games, but they're not MechWarrior, but they're pretty close.
Okay. So Steve, what is your honorable mention?
The StarCraft series.
Good call. Why?
Because honestly, it was one of the first Blizzard games I ever played. And I was not disappointed. It was very much like Command & Conquer, but with space stuff. You had the Zergs, you had the Proteans or Protoss. I knew it was something close. I just couldn't remember. I haven't played it in forever, but yeah, I mean, and then you had the Terrans, and you could command and build all these different infrastructures, and depending on what you had, like the Zerg could burrow underground, the Protoss would kind of, they were kind of energy based in some ways, and then the Terrans had like the physical armaments, and so it was a lot of fun to kind of play through that, and then seeing how you could also fly ships over, and there was just a lot that you could do with it, but it was all based out in space environments, and it was very simplistic in the sense that you couldn't control like a massive army like you could in Command & Conquer, but it was fine because you could also still kind of number base everything and delineate where you wanted them to go and what them to attack. But there was a really fun story behind it. At the moment, I can't remember any of it, but that's because time has been a wicked enemy on my remembrance of it. But I remember having a lot of fun and playing it for hours on end.
Yeah, same thing with me. StarCraft was the first Blizzard game I really fell in love with. I did play Diablo. Honestly, kind of hated it.
I hated Diablo 1. Diablo 2 was really good, and I used to play it online and battle people. Plus, I knew how to hack the game with those mods that you could get. I used to, when I would get beaten by somebody that had some insanely ridiculous mod, I would go in and I would hack their character, and then all of their armaments would drop. I would knock them down to level 1 so they couldn't hold anything. It was very very, very much fun and not right, but they did it first. So and then Diablo 3, I played that a lot, and that was that one was pretty good for a while, and then I kind of lost interest, and now they announced this like mobile version of it, which nobody really cares about.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the StarCraft franchise. I've bought in every collector's edition that's ever come out, though I didn't play anything past StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty. I did have the other version, like Heart of the Swarm, and I forget what the Protoss one was called. But love the franchise. It's a lot of fun, a lot of interesting characterization there, and it pretty much defined esports. When you think of esports, you think of Korean arenas filled to the brim with people playing StarCraft, and there's still millions of dollars being made in StarCraft tournaments. So yeah, Aaron, very quickly, what is your honorable mention?
Borderlands, the Borderlands franchise. I freaking love the game because it's just gun and run, and it's silly, over the top, cheesy, corny, and overall brilliant. I love the art style of it. I love the guns. I love the nuttiness. I love the plot.
Yeah, Borderlands, fantastic franchise. Gearbox really has a winner on there. There's even an adventure game called Tales from the Borderlands done by Telltale Games a number of years ago. The humor in that series is amazingly well done. The newest Borderlands, it was all right.
I liked it. I thought it was fine. I think my favorite, though, out of the three so far, is the second one.
Yeah, same here.
I like the plot of that a lot more. It was kind of heavy hitting. There were points in it that actually made me tear up. But 3 is pretty good. I still enjoy it. The gameplay is great. The plot is good enough. I like the add-ons that they've put out so far for it. So I can't complain. I think it's a lot of fun.
So anyway, guys, those are some of our recommendations that you guys should check out for our favorite PC games or or just game franchises in sci-fi. Yeah, we hit some familiar notes, but we also hit some ones you probably hadn't thought of. So hopefully you will check out some of these games. We do want to hear from you regarding some of your experiences with like some of these games. So Steve, if people want to get a hold of us, where would they have to go?
Well, they can email feedback@geekcastradio.com or feedback@thisweekingeek.net.
All right. And we always do want to hear from you. If you want to reach us on Twitter, you can reach us at This Week in Geek. Alex and I do take care of the Twitter account there. If you want to look for me online, you know where to find me. So anyway, guys, we will be talking about something else here on Future Imperfect rather soon because Star Trek Lower Decks has started. So we're going to see what kind of a wonderful disaster that is. Honestly, I'm kind of looking forward to it because I'm an idiot.
Train wreck.
Train wreck waiting to happen.
Honestly, I am looking forward to watching it. I'm going to be honest about it, but I'm looking forward to watching it.
I'll say this. I'm looking more forward to Lower Decks than I am to Star Trek Discovery Season 3.
Oh, yes, very much so. The only reason I'm going to watch Discovery Season 3 is probably because I'm going to talk about it here.
Yep, I'm watching it out of spite. So on that note, we will catch you folks later. So until the next time we take the USS Future Imperfect out of space dock, we have been
Steve Megatron Phillips,
Aaron Pollyea,
and I've been Mike the Birdman saying, live long and prosper.